and very empowered, very aware, and not all of them. We've been criticized for being too educated. You're going to have to forgive me for that. I don't know quite what it means. But on the flip side, there are women on my team who have come to very difficult positions and been single mothers. One still is a single mother, Tanya, in fact, her face is still up there. So it's meant to showcase that different women can come together over this issue. I'll tell you about one small success that the site has had since we launched, and I didn't actually think it was that big of a success at the time, but it was my 4 minutes of fame on Canada AM with Seamus O'Regan and Vicky Saporta of the National Abortion Federation. I really always thought that everyone wants a good debate. I naively thought everyone wants a good debate, but Vicky Saporta does not. So I realized after this 4 minutes on Canada AM that just my presence, that didn't matter what I said, not a word I said mattered, and I stressed about that an awful lot. I really did lose sleep over this. It's just the fact that I was there that bothered her. She didn't shake my hand in the green room. She couldn't bring herself to say hello. And I realized that this was her big moment to celebrate the Morgentaler decision, and how dare I be even present there. That was the sense I got in that moment. I'm not saying every pro-choicer feels that way, but I certainly got that sense in that moment. So sometimes just standing up and having a voice marks a success. I would like to return to the motivation and the chief frustration behind the site, which is I believe those words, I believe in a woman's right to choose. I think every time this phrase is spoken and it's unquestioned, we lose a little bit of freedom of thought. Incidentally, these words are a very magical soundbite. And if you work in the media for even a small moment, you'll realize there is something to be said for the power of the soundbite. In this soundbite, you can make your opponent seem like they're against human rights. It's almost like you force them against the defensive if you don't question it, really. If you don't probe it, it's very difficult to be against. Who's against women's rights? Who's against choice? Who's against peace at Christmas time? That kind of thing. So I think that if we unpack it a little bit, and this is something I challenge each and every one of you to do, simply by asking questions oftentimes. I think pro-lifers think you got to argue people to the ground. Oftentimes very simple questions cause somebody to think. And you never do win an argument, certainly not in the moment. If I think back to the moments in my life where I've actually been very wrong, I never admit it in the moment. You don't go on TDO the agenda and lie down and die right there in front of your opponent. You wait when you get home later, right? So just asking a lot of questions can be an important thing. So the I believe part shows there isn't a universal truth on this. Nobody says, I believe slavery is wrong. We know slavery is wrong. Nobody says, I believe human trafficking is wrong. We know human trafficking is wrong. I believe we can push abortion into that category of wrongs. And work to achieve commonality, really, a consensus and community over what abortion is. There's, of course, the big choice word, which is the pro-abortion movement's favorite euphemism, which just covers up the whole substance of the debate entirely and doesn't permit people to think freely. And that gets my goat. That makes me very angry because you can't use euphemisms and tell people you're giving them choice. The next two inaccuracies, we're racking up inaccuracies in something that is 8 words long. I think that's interesting. The woman's right, so the woman's part, it's only me. I will believe that abortion is a woman's right and exclusively a woman's issue when I get pregnant on my own. And then there's the right word, which indicates some sort of legislative aspect. And the Supreme Court of Canada, as most of you are likely aware, never said that the unborn don't have a right. In fact, they said quite the opposite. If you have time one day for fun, you can read the Morgentaler decision, don't trust me. They said that the unborn are deserving of some protection, but it's up to Parliament to decide how that would look. Again, don't trust me, go read Morgentaler decision in 1988 from the Supreme Court of Canada. So I think that in unpacking that phrase, there's a lot there, there's a lot hidden, and there's a lot of challenging notions in there, and just a healthy debate and healthy, I think, questioning. You know, if you ask some questions, really, it doesn't have to be rude or aggressive, just ask some questions. Sometimes you find that this is self-refuting. I think the other point with the site is to change the image of pro-lifers. I grew up in Toronto. I still call Toronto home, even though I don't live here. And I think our public perception as pro-lifers is pretty terrible, actually. So based on my schooling, I'll try and replicate a little bit of what I think some people think about pro-lifers. We're probably religious, and in this world, that means you're irrational. You know, you probably haven't really thought about anything. You've been told what to believe, and that's why you believe it. You're probably rural. You probably don't know what city life is like. You may wear exclusively long denim skirts, thick braids, coiled like danishes by your ears. You probably get married really young, and no one's really sure whether that marriage was arranged or not, because your husband doesn't let you speak, and you just keep getting pregnant because you just don't know any better. Anyway, that, I think, is sometimes the perception that people have of pro-lifers as kind of behind the times, out of date. In particular, women who are controlled. So there's the media image. I just found that on the web somewhere. And I don't mean any disrespect to the Amish, incidentally. But then, you know, when people go out and leave their comfort zone, I think you think back to the women on my site, or you even look at Sarah Palin, and she's not unhappy, and she's not been told what to do. And I think this presents a problem that the media oftentimes may not have met that many pro-lifers, to be perfectly honest. I know I never told anyone when I lived in Toronto that I was pro-life. It would have been on pain of death that I came onto this campus and was open about that particular issue. I really had to grow into it and think about it a lot. It's something I'm very open about, that I would have accepted pro-choice mantras way back then. So, not quite sure. I mean, to get into why this stereotype exists would be a talk in itself, I guess, and mostly guessing. I might have overstated the mythology, I might have understated it, I'm not really sure. But I think it has something to do with the second wave of feminism, which, in contrast to the first wave, was stridently pro-abortion. That gets into the problem I expressed at the beginning of the talk, whether feminism is an appropriate term to use or not. Again, I'm taking it in a positive connotation and I'm using it. But the second wave of feminism really has a very strong pro-abortion angle. And so I thought we could talk a little bit about where we're at right now, and that being the reason for the stereotype to a certain degree, the second wave feminism and the sexual revolution. And I also just really dream of being a surfer, so I thought that this would be a good picture to be up on the street. Yeah, so the first wave of feminism is largely seen as the suffragettes fighting for basic rights, the right to vote, etc. And bear with me if you are a women's studies major. I am severely simplifying everything, but we only have a certain amount of time. Second wave feminists were largely associated with sort of a Betty Friedan type of feminism. That's the 1963 book in which the feminine mystique, in which she was very heavy-handed about home as a concentration camp and motherhood as a waste of human self. A very, very strong language, making the claim that women are oppressed by having children and staying home. And so now we stand, I think, at the threshold of a new future where you can define, there's nowhere is it written that a third wave of feminism needs to be pro-abortion or pro-choice. It would be a return to the early suffragettes. In fact, it would not be something new. It would be a return to the way it was. The early suffragettes had a very strong understanding of the unborn and defense of the unborn. So I don't necessarily think that the future is defined in any sense. The other thing I think with feminism today is that given that the main battles have largely been won, so we've overcome the right to work, we don't have